It's time to get classy and break through the class ceiling by discussing and ranking the default classes of Oblivion Remaster from worst to best. While the new gameplay improvements within the remaster, specifically to leveling, make your choice of starting class less impactful than ever, the attributes and skills you choose here can have a large influence on your overall playthrough and enjoyment of the game. But honestly, there really isn't a wrong option here, so just pick and play what sounds fun. That being said, I will be ranking these based on my own experience and preferences for both these skills and overall flavor or theme of the class, which is objectively accurate, of course. Now it's time for some class warfare. Number 21, Healer. Starting at the bottom of the barrel, we have the poor, innocent healer. A kind soul who wishes only to help those on their way, the healer is a perfect class for a follower, not the player character. With no combat skills at all outside of destruction, lacking any armor or weapon proficiencies, the intended playstyle for a healer seems to be as pacifist as possible within the game. While the chosen magic types are powerful, with illusion helping to control the hordes of enemies thirsting for your blood, and restoration being the obvious focus here, the real head scratcher to me is the lack of a focus on conjuration. Having minions to summon that can then be healed seem like the fully intended way to play this class effectively given its namesake. And with no real dedicated followers in the game, at least not to the extent as say Skyrim, a healing focused class is about as useful to me as the adoring fan. The lack of endurance or intelligence as a casting class also hurts here, and in both gameplay and thematically the class just seems completely at odds with the game itself, lacking really anything distinct that's not better done by a different class. The healer for now remains on life support. Number 20, Rogue. Second worst on my list is the rakish rogue, which is surprising because a rogue is as synonymous with classic RPG classes as the warrior and mage. However, the rogue in Oblivion isn't quite the more commonly accepted archetype now seen in pretty much every role-playing game. As opposed to the more sneaky, backstabbing, and acrobatic rogue you may be picturing, Oblivion's version is much more of an old-school fantasy kind of scoundrel, one who gets by on their wits and tricks more than their combat prowess. While the skill lineup for rogue isn't terrible on the face of it, with illusion magic bolstering some combat weaknesses, it's the combination of skills that really results in a poor experience for me. One that in my opinion is just way better realized with other pre-made classes. The lack of a ranged major skill and the lack of sneak are both strange absences, but again, this isn't quite the rogue you normally picture, as it's not even considered a stealth class but a combat one. To that end, if you want to be a lightweight agile fighter, I just think there are way better options. A roguish archetype is a natural fit for Oblivion, both thematically and from a role-playing perspective, and while I think other classes do it way better, if you want to play one anyways, then by all means, go rogue. Number 19, Battle Mage. Despite having probably the coolest and most inspiring class name, the Battle Mage in my opinion falls very short for what the name suggests. You are a mage that can battle, and the image inspires concepts for a ferocious, almost savage-like caster. However, despite some very powerful magical skills, the Battle Mage does not have willpower as a favored attribute, making early game casting way less efficient and effective. That really on its own isn't a huge deal, especially now in the remaster, but the lack of an armor skill of any kind will make you feel extremely squishy, as you lack the magical prowess to dish out the pain to compensate. One of the other issues I'm seeing here is the focus on both blade and blunt weapons, but no focus on endurance, a particularly critical stat for those wanting to get up close and personal. Given the hybrid focus of the Battle Mage, I feel like doubling up on weapon skills is kind of a waste, as one of those precious skill slots could have been used for something much more impactful. Despite attempting to embrace what is in my opinion the best and most fun archetype to play in the game, that of a melee caster, as it stands, the Battle Mage is pretty much objectively worse in what it's trying to accomplish than other options. Battle Mage, more like sad little mage. Nailed it. Number 18, Acrobat. Next worst on my list really demonstrates how subjective this ranking is, as I've placed the baffling Acrobat near the bottom. It's a very unique role-playing class to Oblivion and, well, Morrowind as well, but here's the thing, the Acrobat on the face of it really has some excellent skills and focus. Hitting on pretty much everything agility-based, everything here complements each other and plays together very well. And just by naturally playing to the class, you'll find yourself progressing everything quite nicely, except for arguably the blade focus being the only skill using or leveling the strength attribute. But even that's not a huge deal, especially now with the new leveling system. No, my issue with the Acrobat lies almost entirely on its theme and flavor, as I'm honestly not quite sure what it's even going for. Are you like a charismatic performer of some kind, which is why you have Speechcraft? The other skills all kind of align with this agile thief-like theme, but suddenly Speechcraft is stuck in there almost like an afterthought. Maybe for some they can brainstorm some fun thematic character ideas to roleplay for this class, but for me, I'm just not flexible enough for the Acrobat. Number 17, Thief. On the other hand, here we have a very strong theme that fails to be fully supported by its skills. Given the reactive and interactive world of the Elder Scrolls and Oblivion, and the prevalence of the Thieves Guild throughout the series, Thief is probably one of the most popular archetypes to play within these games. And while being a thief in Oblivion is an amazing time, especially with the incredible Thieves Guild questline, this class in particular can be a challenge to fully realize your sneaky potential. Speed, agility, sneak, security, it all seems to be here and in order, and it's perfectly viable to play a thief well. However, in my opinion, the lack of any magic, specifically illusion, given how powerful it is in Oblivion in manipulating characters and the world, is a big drawback. Another strange omission here is Blade, as getting close to pickpocket or steal can easily result in combat that can be a bit too close for comfort, so not having a solid melee fallback is a bit strange. As a result, as strong a theme as a thief is, getting your grubby little paws on everything shiny can be accomplished much more effectively by other pre-made classes in my opinion. Number 16, Monk. It's time to stop monkeying around and talk about the monk. Okay, first things first, let's take a look at the skills here. Acrobatics, athletics, hand-to-hand, security, sneak, it's all great, but now look at the class image. Is that really what you picture Friar Tuck here being able to do with any degree of competence? Despite the very Western European appearance of this monk, who's clutching his rosary beads as some type of brass knuckles, it's clear the monk is much more inspired by real-life Eastern martial arts and mysticism. This is of course a fantasy world, however I find the clash just funny. That being said, I'll be honest, I can't speak with any great deal of confidence here, as I'm not entirely sure what improvements, if any, have been made to hand-to-hand within the remaster. I only rank this class so low as hand-to-hand and marksman will be your primary damage output for the class, and if memory serves me, hand-to-hand in original Oblivion was hot garbage, with I think the lowest damage output of any combat skill within the entire game. The playstyle in general also doesn't lend itself well to endurance, and as a result the monk is a fairly big glass cannon, without much of a cannon. It's very intriguing though, and I admit the concept of throwing hands with all the monsters is very appealing. However, it's not a playstyle I plan on doing until a few playthroughs deep. I am intrigued though to see if any buffs have been made to this particular playstyle or to hand-to-hand in the remaster. Number 15, Pilgrim. Next we have the Humble Pilgrim, a class I can only really describe with one word: strange. Like the Acrobat, I'm a bit at a loss as to what the thrust of this class is supposed to be, as its skills are just kind of a mishmash of different combinations thrown together. Despite being classified as a stealth class, I think that was redundant. Other than security and light armor, there isn't a whole lot here that gives me stealth vibes. While block and blunt are handy, there's also not much focus on strength, so you'll find your damage output lacking. While I actually think the personality focused skills like mercantile and speechcraft can be really fun and thematic, I still struggle to get what this class is about. You seem to just be a generic light armored charismatic traveler. A pilgrimage might suggest a more religious angle, but the lack of restoration or any other magic focus doesn't quite fit in my mind either. It's not a terrible class, just one I never had any interest in playing personally. Number 14, Barbarian. This is where things get a little harder to rank, as the middle of the pack classes have many pros and cons, so I'm relying on personal preference and themes here. That being said, next is the Barbarian, one of the most iconic role-playing and D&D classes. The Barbarian is usually the heavy-hitting, somewhat tanky, but easy-to-hit bruiser who can just run in and wreck shit. And while charging in with a great axe to wreck shit is alive and well in Oblivion, the fantasy of a Barbarian isn't quite fully realized in the game for me, as outside of the orcish berserk racial ability, there's not really that sense of being a full raging Barbarian in battle. While the martial focus of light armor is fun in theory, more gameplay mechanics were needed to fully realize the potential of this archetype, as it just kind of does things worse than some other combat-focused classes without much benefit as a return, trading survivability for pretty much the same amount of damage output. That being said, for those wanting to roleplay the fur loincloth-wearing two-hand-wielding Barbarian, by all means, go for it and use this class, as you can have an extremely fun time doing so. Number 13, Warrior. The most basic of basics, the Warrior is as streamlined and simple as it gets. With almost exclusively strength, endurance, and melee-focused skills and preferences, this is the class you pick when you want no frills and no fuss, just some good old-fashioned hack and slash. The Warrior is also one of the most basic and fundamental archetypes in all of fantasy, and the Oblivion version embraces that fully. It's actually a great class they chose to default to and pick, and if you're a beginner, you'll have a great time and effective build as you focus on your core combat abilities with the Warrior, with the exception of hand-to-hand, which in my mind could have been marksman to make the Warrior the ultimate warrior. Someone capable of wreaking havoc with any type of weapon in their hands. Every major skill here, other than maybe hand-to-hand, is useful in some way. All that being said, Warrior only really ranks here because it's just pure vanilla. Don't get me wrong, I love vanilla, but some flavor and spice is nice to have as well. And there's always a little something extra I want to do in my builds personally. Number 12, Scout. The eagle-eyed of you may have scouted this out, but next we have Scout. The closest we have to a sort of outdoorsy ranger type, at least thematically, the Scout has some very strong combat skills that can make your life much easier as a nimble-footed, agile melee fighter. A strong duelist, the Scout's focus on speed and endurance helps a lot, as you duck, dodge, dip, dive, and dodge enemies and dance around the battlefield. Alchemy will give you some fun, flavorful poisons and a bit more gameplay variety, with pretty much every other major skill focused on quick combat. What I find weird about the Scout is the lack of marksman. In my mind, when I think Scout, I just picture an archer, but it's not a deal breaker for me, and when it comes to a sort of pure melee duelist, this is one of actually the better classes in the game for that playstyle. That being said, there's still skills I prefer to have that aren't featured on the Scout, namely magical ones. But by all means, scout it out. Number 11, Archer. With Stealth Archer being the default playstyle for most players throughout the Elder Scrolls series, the Archer class seems like a natural fit for this archetype. And in many ways it is. You have all the bangers here: Sneak, Marksman, Light Armor, Hand-to-Hand, Blunt, okay. A very martial focused class, Archer is a good choice. Once again, the major skills and attributes complement each other perfectly. And outside of hand-to-hand, there really isn't a bad skill here in my opinion. The only reason I rank it lower than others is because despite really enjoying stealth archers and ranged combat in general in Oblivion, this is just a nice average safe pick that doesn't present too many options or friction for your gameplay, and as a result doesn't give you that much utility. You'll be quick, effective at ranged, and able to use any close range weapon with comfort, though I think the focus on so many weapon types is funny for a class called Archer. Archer, I barely know her. Number 10, Knight. The noble knight in shining armor mounted on his DLC armored nag is a very appealing playstyle for a reason, and this class I think hits on all the skills you'd expect and want from playing this archetype. While illusion is a bit of the odd one out, using both that and speechcraft to reinforce your personality attribute adds to the general vibe of a charismatic and noble warrior that should define a knight. Lacking any real range skills, the knight is intended to get up close and personal in their heavy armor, and when charm fails, the blades can be drawn and used very effectively with this class. We once again see hand-to-hand as a skill, which while fitting for a knight who would be formally trained in wrestling and close combat, isn't quite as useful to me as you rarely have a reason to put away your sword in favor of some fisticuffs. Overall, while the knight in the original Oblivion had a more difficult stat spread, with the attribute buffs in the remaster, metagaming to ideally level strength, endurance, and personality together doesn't seem to be quite as painstaking as it used to be. Number 9, Agent. I actually think the flavor and role of Agent is pretty awesome, and it has a lot of skills I enjoy using within the game. At this point, it's only ranked a bit lower than the others due to personal preference. Agent's pretty unique, being a sort of charismatic thief, one who can just sort of get to where they need to be through stealth, trickery, and or charm. A personality and agility focused class is a really cool idea, and all the major skills really reinforce the type of character you would want to play as an agent. Sneak, acrobatics, and marksman will always be a strong combo, as you can dance and jump your way to better angles and flanking positions. Illusion magic will really help to keep enemies at bay, as it is an extremely powerful crowd control magic type within Oblivion. While the lack of any armor or melee focused skills does make the agent a little less noob friendly, honestly it's just a very cool class with a great theme. If you want to get your James Bond on in Oblivion, the agent might be your pick. Number 8, Witch Hunter. Another fairly unique spin on some standard tropes, the Witch Hunter is basically your spell sword but with a bow. So your spell bow, using both magic and archery to equal effect to keep enemies controlled and killed from a distance. Alchemy and slowing poison tipped arrows are a fun combo, though strangely in Oblivion you apply the poison to your bow itself, which seems dangerous for the wielder but seems to get the job done. Destruction magic will bolster your ranged abilities as well, but there's actually quite a few powerful touch spells in the game that are a good fallback if enemies get a little too close for comfort. You are, after all, a primarily ranged focused squishy hybrid. However, this is where conjuration becomes extremely useful and puts the Witch Hunter above other ranged focus classes for me. Summoned minions can be extremely useful and fun, and conjuring armies while you pepper enemies in the back lines is a very unique and fun playstyle. Overall, the versatility of the Witch Hunter is fantastic. You just need to be aware that keeping enemies away is your best chance of survival in pretty much any given situation. Number 7, Nightblade. Next to the Battle Mage, we have in my opinion the second coolest named class in the game, with the Nightblade. While I picture much more of a stealthy assassin type based on the title, that's not really what the Nightblade is at all, instead being a lighter alternative to the spell sword, foregoing armor for speed and agility. The Nightblade is just awesome in both its theme and playstyle, being a versatile and powerful magic user who is more than capable of dashing in and out of melee range with their blade. Alteration magic can help buffer some of the downsides of not wearing heavy armor, and between your blade and destruction skills, you should have more than enough killing power to deal with pretty much anything thrown your way. This is sort of another glass cannon class, but this time fortunately you have a much more decent cannon. Say goodnight to your enemies easily with the Nightblade, as it's a very strong choice if you keep in mind how you should be playing towards its strengths. Number 6, Bard. While you won't be prancing around with a lute in Oblivion, unfortunately. You can still sort of play into the vibe of a bard with this pre-made class. Using a mix of social and combat skills to solve problems, the big standout for the bard is their unique blend of personality and intelligence for their favorite attributes. Using illusion to throw enemies into confusion, easily bartering and becoming loved by everyone you meet, and having block and blade skills for when your charm fails, the concept of the Oblivion bard is in my opinion extremely flavorful and fun, being a more involved playstyle than just bashing and slashing. Playing into the archetype makes your major skills extremely useful, and there's not really a bad skill among the bunch in my opinion. While I wish Oblivion featured more options for talking your way out of trouble, this can still be a very fun way to play with lots of gameplay utility and strengths. Number 5, Mage. Of the what I would consider the standard or default class among the classes, in my mind Warrior, Mage, and Thief, Mage is by far the most powerful within the game, if not a little slow to get off the ground. While magic can hit very hard even in the early game and seem a little limited, don't let that fool you, as it is borderline broken in Oblivion. A full mage in Oblivion vs Skyrim is the epitome of the Chad vs Virgin meme, as magic can become extremely powerful and useful within the game. Unbreakable alteration shields, AoE crowd control, destruction that obliterates, the variety of magic in the game is fantastic, and spellcrafting only adds to the madness as you reach higher levels. If you want to go pure, full wizard on your enemies, then Mage is a natural pick as it features major skills in every single school of magic within the game. That being said, as you can expect, you may run into some difficulties with your squishiness, as the Mage doesn't focus on survivability or endurance outside of their spells. Regardless, if the remaster maintains the sheer joy of going full magic like in the original, then this class is a very rewarding and magical pick. Number 4, Assassin. My favorite of the stealth classes, the Assassin is exactly what you think it is. The sneaky, stabby boy. A very flavorful and natural playstyle within Oblivion, stealthy assassins can be some of the most fun within really any Elder Scrolls game, given the hilarity of messing with the AI and general vibe of just stealthing your way through an entire dungeon undetected, as enemies cluelessly wonder if it was just the wind that suddenly stabbed them in the back. Sneak, blade, security, acrobatics, alchemy, it's all here as you'd expect, and coating your daggers in poison as you creep behind oblivious foes doesn't really get old. While sneak can take a little bit to get going, you'll find it very quickly levels up as you regularly use it and can become pretty broken and overpowered fairly quickly. And at that point, having marksman is just a bonus. And this is my personal preference for overall stealth archer in character, as it has everything I want in that particular archetype, minus maybe illusion magic. Even still, the assassin is the best at what they do, and what they do isn't very nice. Number 3, Sorcerer. Who hasn't dreamed of being a magic wielding tank? Anybody? No? Well, if you have, then the Sorcerer will be the class for you, featuring all magic skills except for one notable standout with heavy armor. This is your heavy metal caster, and honestly, it's an extremely badass way to play, as you throw spells around not as a stuffy mage in a robe, but instead a plate armor wearing behemoth, who laughs as they face tank and blast away enemies with equal ease. There's a reason the robe wearing wizard is such a trope, and I understand and fully get the appeal of that archetype, but mixing it up and rolling in with heavy armor as a caster can be an extremely fun time within Oblivion. There isn't much I'd change here. I just think the utility, versatility, survivability, and badass-ility of the Sorcerer makes them an easy choice for one of the best pre-made classes within the game. Number 2, Crusader. At second best, I have the Bringer of Retribution, the holy and noble Crusader. Oblivion's version of the Paladin, the Crusader really ranks this high for me, not just for the extremely fun playstyle, but also just how fitting and thematic it is for the vibe and story of Oblivion. As gates to essentially hell open up and demons flow through, charging through them as a holy shining warrior in heavy plate, drawing on restoration magic to smite your foes is a hard archetype to dislike. As someone whose favorite class in Diablo 2 way back in the day was Paladin, I was naturally drawn originally to Crusader in my early playthroughs of Oblivion and was never disappointed. It just sort of fits in my mind as the natural class the player character would be. While I don't know if the major skills are all as strong as a few I've ranked lower, flavorful roleplay and bias carried the Crusader to the top. Deus Volting the demons of Oblivion never really gets old, and it lends itself to some of my favorite armor sets within the entire game in a thematic sense. So don't be a hater, just go Crusader. Number 1, Spellsword. All that being said, for the Crusader, my favorite playstyle within any Elder Scrolls game wins out at the top. The Spellsword captures everything I love about the unique blend of gameplay mechanics within Oblivion, and pretty much the entire series, and there's a reason I go the Spellsword playstyle for my initial playthrough of any Elder Scrolls game. It's the perfect blend of armor, magic, and melee, with some of the best major skills and attributes rolled into one extremely powerful class. Really, arguably the best default class in the game on a more objective level. But in addition to that, the theme and flavor of a spell sword are top tier, granting the utility of magic with the power of combat skills in a way that other hybrid classes don't fully realize to this extent. Blade, block, and heavy armor skills will ensure your power in melee, with arguably the best schools of magic represented here with destruction, restoration, alteration, and illusion. This class will give you all the tools you need to succeed in the world of Oblivion, and the blend of magic and might makes for some of the most fun and satisfying gameplay, in my humble opinion. It's also the best way to experience as much fun content as you can within a single playthrough, allowing you to dabble in full melee, see and wear heavy armors, and still have a massive selection of spells to tap into and try. 10 out of 10 would spell with swords again. Before we wrap up, however, there is one class that rules them all. One class that, in my opinion, is the only true way to play, and that is custom. While there's nothing wrong about picking a pre-made class, and I've done it many times, really after becoming familiar with the game, I have never looked back from creating my own custom class in pretty much every playthrough. This gives you the freedom to really create whatever you want, or tweak and remove a handful of skills from a class that interests you. Honestly, custom is the only way to go, so ignore everything I just said in this entire video, but the joke's on you because you've already watched it. So thank you for that, and if you disagree, let me know your own personal rankings. That's it for me, until next time.